These last few days have been really tough. Tough on all of us here in the athletics department. Tough on the TCU community. You know, it's frankly a place that was almost kind of unimaginable not too long ago, and so it's just I acknowledge and recognize that it's been a tough time the last 48 hours for all of our Horned Frogs out there, but I promise you there are brighter days to come. Gary Patterson is a TCU icon. He's built this football program. He's helped build this university and this community, and we're forever indebted to his incredible contributions to Fort Worth, to TCU athletics, and to TCU football. But he's more than an icon. He's a friend, he's a colleague, and he and Kelsey are family. They always will be. And not just to TCU, again, to the entire Fort Worth community. As our press release said, Chancellor Boschini and I met with Gary on Sunday and informed him we'd be making a head coaching change at the end of the season. We told him that he would always have a place here at TCU, and that we wanted him to remain within the athletics department in another capacity. As soon as we had come to this decision, we wanted to let Coach know right away. We felt that was the fair thing to do. Out of respect for Gary, we did not want to engage in a search firm without sharing our plans first. We felt that was fair. It wouldn't be fair, rather, to do that. As you all know, the early signing period, December 15th, you've really got to get a head start on what your coaching situation looks like before you get in there. And we felt like letting Gary know as soon as our decision was made was the right course of action. Ultimately, Gary thought that it was in the best interest of the team and the university for him to step away now rather than coach through the end of the season. And he told us that he would prefer to explore other options rather than playing a new and different role within the university. And so we mutually agreed to part ways at that point. I respect his decision and his judgment and what he felt was best for this transition, best for his team, which he made very clear was the most important thing, and ultimately for the school. So that afternoon, we negotiated the broad strokes of an acceptable agreement that would release him from his contract and allow him to step away immediately. And after that moment, I asked Coach Jerry Kill to step in on an interim duty, which he gracefully accepted. We're still working through that agreement, so it's not appropriate this time to make any further comments on what that agreement looks like. But I would tell you that Coach he's been unbelievable in this transition. He's shown a ton of class and professionalism. This has not been easy for any of us, and so I'm just very grateful to him for the way in which he's handled that. And I would just leave on this. On a personal note, you know, I'm very grateful to Gary for the time we've had together. I've enjoyed 10 years working with him side by side, 4 years in the current role. But I think he'd agree that we've had a good working relationship, and I'll miss that. We've had some great times together, and so I know I speak for the entire TCU community when I say that to he and Kelsey that we'll miss them, but we know they won't be far, and ultimately we wish them the very best. So at this point, I'll take questions.
Jeremiah, Gary was viewed as untouchable, kind of as you alluded to. At what point did you realize that a change had to be made?
Well, I think I would start probably at the beginning of the season to say that we had very high expectations for this year, and I think we all, Gary included, felt that this was going to be somewhat of a bounce back year. We know that the last few years have been subpar based on the standards that Gary has set for this program, and so I'd tell you that probably mid-October was when it became apparent that we weren't going to meet those expectations, and so we started the conversation about what that would look like potentially. So I don't have an exact date, but I would tell you that probably mid-October.
Jeremiah, when you say that he's exploring other options, do you expect him to coach somewhere?
He certainly could. I mean, if you all know Gary, he's a young 61, and I wouldn't put anything past Coach Patterson to coach again in college, pro. I know he has a lot of other interests too, and so I hope he takes some time to think about what he wants to do, because he's got a lot to offer the game of football, and I don't think that that's over necessarily.
David, when do you hope to have a replacement? Do you have a timeline for that?
Well, it has to be early December, as I mentioned earlier. Whereas, before a few years ago when they changed the early signing period, you could wait till after bowl season and talk with coaches. And one of the reasons we informed Gary now was because we need to have a head coach in early December. We need someone in place, staff in place to be there to talk to recruits as we get to December 15th, which is the early signing period was when it starts.
Jeremiah, with recruiting so vital, is there any discussion of keeping any of those guys currently on staff around?
Well, we have some good coaches, and there will be the new head coach will have ultimately, authority to retain who he wants to retain and to bring in his own staff. So we've got a lot of good coaches, coaches that I'm very have strong feelings for to retain. But ultimately, and I can share that with the new coach, but ultimately that's going to be his call.
You talked about not meeting certain goals. Do these goals now change? Are you playing catch up to those old goals, or are you starting from zero?
No, we're not starting from zero. That's a credit to Gary. I mean, this is not, it's been 21 years since someone stood in front of this group talking about a coaching change in football. What he's built a top 10 program, and the interest we're receiving already indicates that. So this is not a rebuild. Someone's going to be able to come in here, we believe, and to continue on with that trajectory of success that we had there for a long time.
Jeremiah, what qualities are most important when it comes to looking for the next head coach of TCU football?
Yeah, great question. So someone who's currently a head coach would be where we'd start. I think this is a job that, like I said, is it's much different than it was. And so, we'd like someone, just candidly speaking, someone that understands what the new world of college athletics looks like. Talk about name, image, likeness. Talk about the transfer portal. Those things, that's what the modern coach is going to have to be very adept at doing, and those are going to be important questions we ask. Just generally speaking, TCU is a family, and someone who shares those values that we hold so dear will also be important. So I'd start there. The process began early Monday morning, early yesterday, and we've made a ton of progress already. We're in the process of vetting candidates, and as I said, there's a lot of strong interest, and I'm very confident we're going to have an excellent coach here very soon.
With all the changes in college life, like you mentioned, and all that, but also realignment, how critical is it that by the time that TCU kind of embarks on what the new Big 12 looks like, that they kind of are on track?
That we're on track with the new coach?
Yeah, just in terms of that TCU is in good standing as a football program as sort of the new world of college.
Well, you'd be silly not to have that in the back of your mind, because I don't believe that conference realignment is over. I don't believe it'll ever be over. And you saw the effect of essentially two dominoes falling, and how that's affected the entire landscape. And so you imagine one or two more dominoes falling and what that could look like. So I don't, there's television contracts that are soon to expire, the Big 10, Pac-12, Big 12, and so it's very conceivable that there's more movement to come. And so, it's my job to ensure that we're always, in the best position possible. So there's nothing probably more important with regards to that than our football program. So to answer your question, this is a huge hire.
Sorry, Jim, with the creation of the transfer portal, do you address your team to make sure that they don't leave? Because I think there's a paranoia about that with all college programs. The guys are just going to leave, and given now the uncertainty with coaching situations, you have to address that.
Sure, and ultimately, it's going to be their choice to stay or to go once the new coach is in place. I met with the team Sunday evening after the news came out, and I just and I'm in the process of reaching out to them because I want to get a chance to allow them to speak into what their experience here has been. We make a lot of promises a lot of big promises to recruits, and we want to make sure that we're fulfilling those. And so a lot of this right now is you know, looking at the program, making sure we're delivering on that promise. But ultimately, you know, it's going to have to be a fit for those kids, you know, and they're going to have to understand what the coach's vision for that is before they make a decision to stay or to go. I realize that with any coaching change, you're going to have some people that are going to want to leave, and so that's just comes with it. But you'll probably have some people that will come to TCU specifically for, you know, whatever the new coaching situation looks like. So it's fluid, is what I tell you, Mac. I mean, it'd be silly to you know, try to convince a kid not to make a decision before the new coach is here, though.
Jeremiah, was there any way Gary could have stuck around till beyond this season, or did you kind of make it clear that you weren't going to retain him?
Yeah, we made the decision to not bring him back for the 2022 season, and thank you for bringing that up, Drew. I do want to make one clarification, because this really needs to be said. There's some bad information out there, and naturally, when this happens quickly, you know, you can't totally prevent that. But there was a report that I gave Gary an ultimatum to terminate Doug Meacham and Jerry Kill to retain his job, and I tell you that is 100% false. That was never presented. I know that, Gary knows that. So it's unfortunate that's out there, because Doug and Jerry are working their tails off, and that was never presented. That was never an option that Gary could have considered. So I want to make it very clear that was never. That's not accurate.
And kind of going off that, you know, like a guy like Gil Brandt said, TCU should be embarrassed about how this Gary Patterson's tenure ended. I'm sure this is not what you envisioned,
No.
A mid-season departure. Right?
No, this is not what we envisioned at all, and it's certainly not what we wanted, and not what Gary wanted. So, you know, it's probably easy to say that, but you know, ultimately. We had, as I said, we have very high expectations for this program, and that's because of Gary. You know, that's the irony of it, is that he's built this program, and so we weren't meeting those expectations, and he would acknowledge that as well. So, you know, I think Mac wrote a great piece about, you know, divorce never ends well, and I think anytime a coach or, you know, a high-ranking professional leaves an organization, it's difficult to do that as well. So I think, you know, ultimately we've done our best, and I would also say, though, that I do think there's a day. You know, one of the things we really wanted to do with Gary for the month of November was really celebrate him and honor him, and he didn't. If you know Gary, that's not what he wants. But I do believe there will be a time where we can do that appropriately, and I look forward to that. But it just wasn't in the cards to do that right now.
Jay, in terms of one of the common criticisms as well, you couldn't have handled that, right? I'm sure you've seen that. They should have handled it differently. To people who say that, what do you say to that assertion? How could have handled that?
Gee, you know, I mean, it's if you weren't. It's probably a fair criticism, just because I don't think anyone wanted it to end this way. But I thought we handled this very fairly. You know, we could have gone through the season and hired a search firm behind coach's back. Would that have been fair? So, you know, what we've done here at TCU, which I'm very proud of, is that whenever we determine what's the right move or decision for the university, we then turn to what's the right and fair way to treat the employee when it deals with an employee, and I have 100% confidence we did that this time.
Jeremiah, when you talked about someone familiar with NIL, transfer portal, with you guys being in this area, DFW, hotbed for recruiting, do you guys look at someone that has strong Texas ties?
Certainly a consideration. You know, I wouldn't say it's absolutely necessary. You know, coaching, there's so much movement in college that it's, you know, coaches go from East Coast to West Coast in Texas, so there's probably ways that you can, you know, if the head coach isn't necessarily a Texas native, there's probably ways that you can, you know, bring support staff and assistants that have strong Texas ties. So I wouldn't say that's, you know, that's absolutely necessary. But, you know, the DFW marketplace, I think is going to be, it has shown already, but it's a big advantage for us. And so that's especially in this NIL space, I think that's something I really want to hear, our coach's vision for how we can continue to do a better job there, because this is still evolving. NIL is something that's not we don't even have a one set rule yet, and so but it is going to be very important that the new head coach has an NIL strategy.
Jeremiah, over the last couple of days, obviously several recruits have reopened their commitment and just decided to look at other schools. How much of an effort are y'all making sure that there's not complete fallout there, or is that something you consider inevitable given the situation?
Good question, and I have all of their names and numbers, and so I will be reaching out to them just to share with them my thoughts and what I just shared with you, kind of my vision for the new coach, and also just we will honor those commitments for those that have already committed to us, but we're going to, obviously the new head coach is going to have a big say in what their role is with the team, but I will be reaching out to every one of the commitments. I believe there are 11 so far, so they can personally hear from me and share with them my thoughts.
How much is the timing of this impacted by, like you mentioned, the early signing period? I mean, if it is February that you guys are looking to, do you think that impacts how quickly you feel you have a candidate in place?
Well, the December 15th deadline changes everything. When the old signing day of what February 2nd or 3rd, whatever the first Tuesday was, or Wednesday, it was different. You could get through bowl season and you could kind of let this play out a little bit. But now that the December 15th deadline, it's not a deadline, but it really is when everyone signs, that just accelerates the process. And so, we would like to have someone in place so that we can have those conversations, because what we don't want to do is have, if you didn't have someone in place, you kind of miss out on one big recruiting cycle, and that's just going to hurt the program. So it was very important that once the decision was made to make sure that we were upfront about it and get started on it.
You mentioned potentially using a search firm. What's the process going to look like for you guys to identify candidates and hire these?
Yeah, so we've engaged a search firm, Turnkey, who we've used before. They've been excellent. We've used them for a couple projects, and so what we'll do is we'll have a small committee here on campus made of trustees and a couple staff members, and so we've already started vetting candidates, and we'll get to a place where we'll hopefully have a situation where we can conduct some interviews here. But that's kind of how it'll work. The search firm will help us vet the candidates and kind of go over the criteria that we're looking for, at least initially.
Jeremiah, you guys have some guys with deep football ties on the trustees when you look at an LT or Joe Briggs. I mean, how involved will you have them, or will they be pretty heavily involved?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is make no mistake, and this is a huge hire. It's a huge decision, and so we'd obviously even though the committee may be small, it doesn't mean I'm not going to be seeking a lot of input. And those two you mentioned, LT and Joe Briggs, and there's others. Will be, I can't wait to hear their thoughts and their ideas they have. So no, they'll be very much engaged, and I've heard from both.
We'll go 2 more questions, then we'll go to Coach Kill. Jeremiah, is there any focus on the schematics that a coach has? Like, are you guys looking as an offensive coach, defensive coach? Have y'all had those discussions yet?
Well, I would tell you that it would be very difficult to bring in a coach who's very defensive-minded, given Gary's legacy. That doesn't mean that we're not looking at defensive candidates, but I think that just to be fair to the coach, I mean, when you have an iconic Hall of Fame legendary coach who is one of the best defensive minds that's ever coached in college, it's going to be very difficult for that person to fill those shoes. And so, I'm not saying we're not looking at defensive candidates, but, I would also tell you that it probably feels at this point a little more natural to go the other way.
When you look at the job marker, LSU, USC, some blue blood openings out there, where do you feel TCU stacks up with some of these other openings?
Well, just perception-wise, probably right behind them. I mean, obviously LSU and USC have won national championships more recently, but and they're two outstanding universities and great football traditions, but I don't see why we're not right there behind that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here.
We'll now be joined by interim head coach Jerry Kill. He'll make an opening statement and then take questions.
Well, I haven't done this since the University of Minnesota, so see if I'm rusty or not. But I think in my statement here opening is, I appreciate the opportunity that, I was at Virginia Tech, came here to TCU, and I've known Gary for 38 years, so there's a lot of, emotion built up in that. He actually, visited, and I imagine you all visited on what the best situation was, and he asked me to, to be the intern, and I said I'd do whatever he wanted me to do, and I owed him that, and he said I'd like for you to do that, so that's what I'm doing. But I would say the thing that I think that the state of Texas needs to understand, and certainly TCU, I worked for Bill Snyder for a short time and very close to Bill, but this is the house that Gary built. Let's to me, looking from the outside, and I've talked to several coaches throughout the country, and he's done an incredible job here. For coaches to stay 20 years or been here 23 years is unheard of in this day and age. It's not going to happen anymore. It's just the way the business is. And for him to stay at one place and do what he's done, he's an icon. And several people have called me that, he's a Hall of Famer, and it probably won't take very long to be a Hall of Famer. Very well respected in the profession, and I'm glad to call him my friend. Even though I didn't coach with him all these years, everybody thinks I coached with him, but I didn't, except for these last 2 years. But he's had a hell of a ride, and most coaches don't get to say that, really, with what he's done, and I know that everybody's worked for him, everybody that knows him, there's deep respect, and there's no question, so ask Jeremiah about coaching. There's no question he'll be coaching again. Come on, y'all know him, and he'll be coaching. I don't know what he'd be coaching. He says, Coach, I want to be a consultant, and then after what I heard today, he may not want to be a consultant, so I never, maybe a consultant's not a safe thing, but anyway, he's special, and I hope that you all understand that. And what you see sometimes is not what you get behind closed doors. There's not a more caring person in the world and more loyal person in the world than he is. And just look at the track record of how many people have stayed with him. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Jerry, how do you keep the team engaged these last 4 games, especially, and the staff for that matter, especially with such a big coaching change going on?
Well, I've done it a long time. I think that helps. I know I feel like that, we just went to business. Gary said, go to practice. We went to practice, and we carried on regular business. And, coaches all understand, we understand where we're at. And the way you do it is like anything in life. You roll your sleeves up and you go to work. And that's what we've done. I mean, our coaching staff right now is doing a heck of a job with preparation and getting ready for Baylor. And, we got to get some healthy kids. I think that's the biggest problem we've had all year. We just, we've been beat up all year. And but as far as the transition goes, I think that's a lot up to me, and I've been through it. I've built programs and built them up, and this is unusual to take one over with 4 games left. But really, the principles and those things don't change, and you just do what you do, and you owe it to the kids. So every coach in there, we didn't get into business back. I got in it 40-some years ago. I didn't get into business for money. I got into business for kids. And most of those people sitting in there have gotten into business because of, us older folks, I guess, have gotten into business for kids. And our coaches are going to bust their butt for the kids. And so I guess that answered the question. Does that answer your question for them?
Coach, speaking of transition, you know, Coach called the plays on defense. Have you thought about how that transition will work Saturday? Who's going to be calling defense?
Well, I think, you know, it'll be, you know, we visited about it. You know, Chad's the defensive coordinator and has been, and then, you know, he'll be working with the staff. We haven't sat down and just said, you know, where we're at. We're trying not to break too much of that up, but, you know, there's always been a couple people involved, you know. Now, Gary being the man, so to speak, there's always going to be a change there. You know, it's going to be different. But you know, I think our coaches have been so well trained by Coach. I mean, they've been in there every day, and for I don't know how many years. You know, his blueprint is on that thing. So I think we'll be fine.
Coach, have you had a chance to talk to the team yet? And what has your message been to them? And what's the mood like in the locker room?
Shoot, I started coaching that team. I don't know, when Gary said we're going to practice at 5:30, and I was coaching the team at 5:30. And like I said, I've taken programs over before, so it's not something that, you know, I talked to the offense or defense first, talked to the offense before they started, and then I talked to them as a group, and thought it went well. And you know, I think the kids here respect me. You know, I've been around them enough, and you know, we'll go to work today. Got a good game plan, and we'll go to work today and get after them. And you know, nobody's going to be Gary Patterson. All right, I don't claim to be Gary Patterson, you know, or anything like that. There's only one of them. There'll never be another one. Okay, but you know, I've been fortunate to be around a lot of good people too, and I'm just going to be me. You know,
The atmosphere with the kids.
What's that?
How's the morale and the atmosphere with the players?
You know, I think, you know, anytime you set a room and you know you're not going to have your head coach, I think they were crushed at first. But, you know, I think probably the best thing we did, and I wasn't sure about it, was go to practice and get started. And, you know, we'll see a lot more today, you know, where they fit and how they feel. But, you know, I haven't had talked to several of them yesterday, and I haven't had any negative feedback whatsoever. And you know, we've been, you know, Jeremiah talked about recruiting. We're still recruiting. We got our recruiting people recruiting, our coaches, and trying to hold kids in and talking with them. And you're always going to have a kid's going to. We're trying to say, hey, you know, stay in here with us till we get the new head coach in. And some of them are going to open up their recruiting, which is natural. Timing of hiring the head coach will be important, but we're not stopping. Not trying to help TCU, you know, that would not be fair to Gary. And, you know, we got to carry on his legacy. And so if we just stop not doing anything and, you know, everybody thinks everybody's out looking for a job, you know, that's not happening right now. We're working, you know, and, you know, if you work and you do well, then the jobs that are, if you're out of a job, you get a job a lot quicker, you know, if you're doing your job here. So, you know, we're doing everything, you know, just like we're going to be here. And we all know in college coaching that's not going to happen. You all know that when a new coach comes in. I had to do it myself, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times, where you have to go in and talk to the staff. And, you know, it's not easy to do, but you're going to bring your people in most of the time, but you'll hold on to a few. But we're you know, the worst thing we can do is let it slide. You know, then that doesn't look very good. And we got plenty. I mean, we're young on offense, and basically we sat in here and had 55 kids that sang the fight song for the first time ever, you know, here at TCU. So it's not like the cover's empty. It's just beat up, really beat up. So, you know, that's our job. You know, we're here to represent TCU. Gary's going to represent TCU. He loves Fort Worth. He ain't going anywhere. And so we'd let him down if we didn't get those kids to play hard. And that's our job. We got to get the kids to play hard. That's what we have to do. That's what you know. And I have to lead our coaches. That's what we have to do, and get their morale going. And And we'll see if we can do it or not. That's part of the challenge. I like challenges, though.
It's probably been a long time since you answered a quarterback question, but have y'all talked about Max and Chandler this week and who goes there?
Shoot, I had that question asked every week at Minnesota. Everybody wants to know who the quarterback's going to be and that kind of stuff. I'm really not ready to answer that question. I'm not dodging the question either. But, right now, Max, everybody knows he's been playing, with a bone fracture, and it's starting to take its toll on him. There's no question about that. Don't rule him out or anything, because we could have done that last week, and he just keeps fighting and so forth. But we're also not going to put anybody in harm's way either. And so today's going to be an important day on that evaluation, Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we'll make that decision and move on. But that's being honest as I could tell. I wish I could tell you. But that's as honest as I can tell you right now, because, I need to see how Max is today.
Jerry, you've been around the industry for so long, just how much has it changed with the NIL and the transfer portal and whatnot,
Yeah, I was head coach, I guess, 6 years ago. I don't know, somewhere in there, 5, 6 years ago, and my whole life changed. And I've never seen anything change in the last 6 years like it has when I was coaching in Minnesota. It's unbelievable. Most time it takes 10 or 20 years. I mean, this game's changed in the last 6 years more than any game I've ever seen. And, I don't know. I'm not who's making all these decisions and all that kind of stuff, but it's made the game harder, and more time for the coaches. And, you got to, recruiting makes it difficult. How you go coach a kid? If you get on him, is he going to enter the portal? After one, so there's a lot of questions yet, and it'll be interesting how this all goes. I'm not sure everybody knows how all this is going to go, because it's like, are you going to put a cap on likeness? They did in the NFL. There's caps in the NFL. So what are you going to do? Are you going to keep it the same? So it'll be interesting what happens over the next 5 or 6 years on how all this is handled, because it puts a lot of pressure on everybody.
We'll go 2 more questions.
Coach, can you give us some preview of Baylor, what you're seeing out of them on tape, how they've improved from last year to this year?
Well, I think, it's a lot of the same guys that we played against last year. The problem is, we're running into these teams that got guys that are 6 years, they're playing 6 years. And we have a young team, and that's the same thing with Baylor. They got a lot of holdovers. Oklahoma State's got a lot of holdovers. I can just keep going. But, they got that big nose guard, from LSU, and he's going to be hard to handle, but our center's fired up about it. That gives him a chance to showcase his talents. So, but they're aggressive on defense. I think Coach has been able to put his blueprint on it in a year's time. And, they're playing good football right now. And anytime you're winning, you gain confidence. And as you gain confidence, all of a sudden you think you're pretty good. And then all of a sudden you're pretty good. And that's kind of where they're at. And, we'll have our hands full. We understand all the stuff that's gone on. But, again, it's, our job as a coaching staff to make sure that doesn't happen. And it's not going to be easy. But last I knew, life isn't easy. There's no guarantees. And, you got to handle adversity. And you can't handle adversity, then, you're not going to make it in this world. So we'll be fine, and we'll be playing for Gary Patterson, over the next 4 weeks. That's our job. That's what we need to do.
Last question.
Yeah, Coach, on the note there, just with how close you were with Gary, is there any part that's hard for you emotionally to just turn around and have to get your team ready for a game after all that's happened the last couple of days?
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of emotion, a lot of emotion, but it's my job to represent him and TCU. And so I can't sit around and feel sorry? Is there emotions deep down, and is there emotional, on, what was it, Sunday? And yeah, there's emotion, and it's difficult. It's a difficult profession, and but he'd be disappointed. He knows me. He'd be disappointed if I sit around and feel sorry for myself and feel sorry for him and all that kind of stuff. 5:30 told me he needed me to do the job, and that's what I've done. I've just went straight ahead, and I got all kinds of text messages. I don't know. I can't count them all. I hadn't returned one of them. I ain't got time. I ain't got time to return text messages. Don't worry about me being on Twitter. You're not going to get a hold of me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever other stuff's out there that I'm not going to deal with it. So you can say anything about me. I guess somebody already has, and I can't figure that out at all because I'm not calling plays and all that stuff, and I'm just kidding with meets and all that. But the point is that I ain't got time to do all that stuff, and I've got to make sure that I take care of the football team. Why I'm here is because of the players and Gary Patterson, and I've been asked to put in this position to do it because I love and I've coached all my years for the players, and I will continue to do that the best of my ability over the next 4 weeks, and then it's all I can do. Give you all my best and give Gary all my best and the administration. That's my job at TCU.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys coming.